In December 2017, the New York Times published an article that changed the UFO conversation permanently. The headline reported that the Pentagon had been running a secret program to investigate unidentified aerial phenomena, and that it had been funded to the tune of $22 million. The program was called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP. Its existence had been hidden from the public, from most of Congress, and from the Department of Defense's own leadership. And the man who ran it had just resigned in protest because, he said, the government was not taking the threat seriously enough. Tonight I want you to tell me, when your own government secretly spends $22 million investigating UFOs, and the man in charge quits because they are not doing enough, what does that tell you about what they found? Comment below. The story begins not with AATIP, but with its predecessor, a program with an even more revealing name, the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program, or AAWSAP, was established in 2008 under the Defense Intelligence Agency. It was funded through a congressional earmark secured by Senator Harry Reid of Nevada, with support from Senators Daniel Inouye of Hawaii and Ted Stevens of Alaska, two of the most senior members of the United States Senate. The contract was awarded to Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, a company owned by Robert Bigelow, the hotel and aerospace entrepreneur who had publicly stated his belief in extraterrestrial visitation. AAWSAP's scope was extraordinarily broad. It investigated UAP encounters reported by military personnel. It commissioned 38 research papers on advanced physics topics, including warp drives, extra dimensions, anti-gravity, and wormhole theory. It sent investigators to Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, a property owned by Bigelow that had been the site of decades of reported paranormal and UAP activity. DIA investigators documented phenomena at the ranch that went beyond conventional UFO sightings, including poltergeist-like activity, creature sightings, and what they described as a hitchhiker effect, where investigators began experiencing anomalous events in their own homes after visiting the site. This is the part of the program that made officials uncomfortable. AAWSAP was not just tracking radar blips, it was investigating the intersection of UFO phenomena with consciousness, parapsychology, and dimensions of experience that mainstream science does not acknowledge. Several DIA officials became concerned that the program had moved beyond threat assessment into territory they considered unscientific. The AAWSAP contract ended in 2012, but the work did not stop. Elizondo, a career intelligence officer who had worked in counterintelligence, took over a continuing effort within the office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. This continuation became known as AATIP. Elizondo has stated that AATIP operated with minimal funding and limited institutional support, but continued to collect and analyse UAP reports from military personnel, particularly Navy pilots. The cases AATIP investigated were not fringe reports from anonymous civilians. They were encounters reported by trained military aviators operating the most sophisticated sensor platforms on Earth. The program identified 5 observable characteristics of UAP that defied conventional explanation: instantaneous acceleration without visible propulsion, hypersonic velocity without signatures such as sonic booms or heat trails, transmedial travel, the ability to move seamlessly between air, water, and space, low observability despite being visible to multiple sensor systems simultaneously, and positive lift without any identifiable means of propulsion, such as wings, rotors, or exhaust. These 5 observables were not theoretical, they were documented across multiple encounters by multiple witnesses with multiple sensor systems. The Nimitz encounter in 2004, the Tic Tac, demonstrated all 5. The USS Roosevelt encounters in 2014 and 2015, the gimbal and go fast videos, demonstrated several. In each case, the objects were detected on radar, tracked by infrared sensors, and observed visually by trained pilots. The data was consistent, the objects were real, and they were performing maneuvers that no known technology, American, Russian, Chinese, or otherwise, could replicate. Elizondo grew increasingly frustrated with what he described as institutional resistance to taking the data seriously. He has stated that certain senior officials within the Department of Defense actively obstructed the program, not because the evidence was weak, but because the implications were too disruptive. In October 2017, Elizondo resigned from the Department of Defense. His resignation letter, addressed to Secretary of Defense James Mattis, stated that the United States government was not taking the UAP issue seriously despite overwhelming evidence, and that bureaucratic secrecy was preventing proper assessment of a potential threat to national security. 2 months later, the New York Times published its article. Alongside the story, the Pentagon officially released 3 videos captured by Navy pilots, FLIR-1, Gimbal, and Go Fast. These were not leaked. They were officially declassified and released. The Pentagon confirmed that the videos were authentic and that the objects depicted remained unidentified. The 38 research papers commissioned by the program, known as the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents, or DIRDs, covered topics that read like a catalogue of science fiction made real. They included papers on traversable wormholes, stargates, and negative energy, advanced nuclear propulsion for deep space missions, invisibility cloaking, metallic glasses with programmable properties, and the manipulation of extra dimensions. Each paper was authored by a credentialed scientist and submitted to the DIA as an official deliverable under the AAWSAP contract. The question these papers raise is significant. If the government commissioned research into wormholes, anti-gravity, and invisibility cloaking as part of a UFO investigation program, it means that the people running the program believed, or at least seriously considered, that the technology being observed in UAP encounters operated on principles described in those papers. You do not commission 38 peer-level research papers on exotic physics because you think the Navy pilots are seeing weather balloons. After Elizondo's departure, the institutional landscape shifted. The Navy updated its UAP reporting guidelines in 2019, making it easier for pilots to file reports without career consequences. In June 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence published a preliminary assessment confirming that UAP were real, that they posed a potential flight safety risk, and that most reported incidents remained unexplained. In July 2023, David Grush testified before Congress that the government possessed retrieved non-human craft and biological materials, testimony that was a direct consequence of the chain of events that began with AAWSAP and AATIP. The program that Harry Reid quietly funded in 2008 did not answer the question of what UAP are, but it established, through official channels, with official funding, and with official documentation, that the question is real. The objects exist, the data is there, the physics papers suggest what the technology might involve, and the man who ran the program quit because he believed the answers were being deliberately withheld. $22 million, 38 research papers, 3 declassified videos, 1 resignation in protest, and a government that spent a decade pretending none of it existed. Subscribe now and follow the evidence.